Chapter 6. Canary. There was always a nominal meeting scheduled at the Herhart's mansion every summer, but this year everyone knew that Claudine von Brandt did not visit Arvis just for that simple reason. The meeting was created for the two families to pre-negotiate and promote friendship between the different parties before announcing the engagement to the public. The two families' purpose of the meeting was clear, and neither side had tried to hide it, especially Claudine.
"Hello, Duke Herhart,"
Claudine greeted Matthias with perfect courtesy. The cousin that stood in front of Matthias had grown into a refined lady. He could barely see any traces of the short, whiny girl.
"Welcome, Lady Brandt."
Matthias also formally greeted Claudine back. The two gracefully smiled at each other. There was nothing new going on between the two. Although they weren't very close or intimate, they have seen each other for a long time, so they both knew how thoroughly aristocratic Matthias von Herhart and Claudine von Brandt were to the bones. And that was the most biggest and obvious reason why they chose each other. Matthias skillfully escorted Claudine. Elise von Herhart had ordered her servants to prepare their afternoon tea in the glass greenhouse connected to the back of the mansion. It was one way of showing Elise's consideration for Claudine, because she loved the greenhouse.
"This greenhouse is always beautiful every time I visit. It's as if Duchess Elise has moved heaven in here."
Claudine, who drank the tea without a sound, gladly complimented. She spoke in a cheerful yet calm manner like a courteous lady.
"I've spent so much time decorating this place, and looking forward to passing it on to a hostess who knows its value."
Elise von Herhart replied in a soft voice. Countess Brandt glanced at her daughter with a proud and emotional look. Claudine gave a moderate, shy smile.
"Matthias, show Claudine around Arvis's heaven."
Elise von Herhart whispered at the end of their tea time. Full-scale negotiations seemed to have started taking place. As Matthias extended his hand, Claudine smoothly placed her translucent lace-gloved hands over Matthias's. The sudden image of the pale white hand, stained with dust and blood, was briefly revived over Matthias' head and then disappeared. The two walked along the trail as they conversed on a moderate topic. A slow stream of water flowed down from the marble fountain that adorned the center of the greenhouse. The clear cries of birds diluted the afternoon's languid atmosphere. Claudine stealthily glanced at Matthias, even though he always had a peaceful smile. It was hard to read his true emotions, as well as his attitude towards the world. He was a man of impeccable politeness, but he was also a man of arrogance, who had never bowed down to anyone in his life. He was quite an interesting subject to observe, according to Claudine, of course.
"The birds in this greenhouse are really pretty."
Claudine marveled at the colorful birds perching on the branches. Matthias had only now recognized the existence of these birds in the glass greenhouse. Arvi's current hostess, Elise von Herhart, loved birds as much as she loved roses. Just as how the gardeners were in charge of growing the roses, the zookeepers were in charge of caring for the birds in the greenhouse. Elise's role was to just enjoy the view. That was how Elise von Herhart viewed her beautiful world. Enjoy the work others had completed for her.
"I can't believe it. This one's so obedient. What's your secret?"
Claudine asked as she smiled at the small bird that had landed on her hand. Matthias leisurely looked around his surrounding. The birds in this greenhouse were surprisingly docile. Even though the window was wide open, the birds didn't dare to fly away. They continued to sing beautifully in the tranquil environment. Matthias observed the parrot waddling over its perch and the Bengalese finch singing on Claudine's hand. He then focused his attention to the grey-haired zookeeper. The zookeeper slowly walked in front of Claudine and answered,
"I cut their wings, miss. Then they can neither fly away nor escape, so they become submissive. If I let them be with their wings uncut, they become impossible for me to tame."
"Wings? Wouldn't that hurt them?"
"I only cut their feathers so they won't feel pain. It's actually a good thing for the birds because it'll prevent them from accidentally flying to dangerous places and get injured. Would you like for me to demonstrate?"
"Would that be okay, Lord Herhart?"
Claudine asked with her eyes twinkling.
"As you wish, my lady."
When Matthias willingly gave his permission, the zookeeper escorted them to a large cage located at the end of the greenhouse. There were birds whose wings weren't clipped yet. The zookeeper pulled out a gorgeous yellowish-colored bird among the flock of birds and approached the workbench.
What type of bird is it?
Matthias asked as he watched the bird.
It's a canary, master. A lovely singing bird.
The zookeeper briefly answered as he covered the bird's eyes with a small handkerchief, and then spread its wings with his left hand. The zookeeper swiftly grabbed a pair of sharp scissors with his remaining hand. The zookeeper moved the scissors blade without hesitation. The feathers of the cut wings scattered over the workbench. He finished up his work by snipping off the other side of the wings, and let the bird free. The bird fluttered its wings desperately, but it did not fly far and slowly sang. As if the bird couldn't deny the fact that it could no longer fly, it tried to fly away several more times, but the result was the same. While watching, Matthias leaned his waist forward and picked up the panting yellow bird resting at the end of the flower bed. The little bird trapped in his grasp began to struggle and chirp, but its chirp sounded more like a scream than a song.
It doesn't get tamed easily, master. It takes time for the bird to get used to the clipping.
Matthias handed the bird over to the zookeeper.
Would you like to try taming one, miss?
The zookeeper gently caressed the bird to calm it.
I'm interested in watching animals, not taming them. Thank you for resolving my curiosity.
Claudine politely refused and turned.
Let's return to the tea table now.
This time, Claudine reached out her hand first. The memory of the beautiful sculpture-like hand that was soiled with dust and blood briefly came into Matthias's mind once again, and then faded away. Before he left the area with Claudine, Matthias left an impulsive order.
Take it to the bedroom.
Pardon?
The zookeeper's eyes widened at the unexpected remark.
That bird.
Matthias pointed to the bird with his thinly opened eyes.
My canary.
Leila neatly tied her combed blonde hair into a single ponytail. After that, she wore an apron and didn't forget to pick up her massive basket.
I'm going to put an end to this.
Leila's face, as she muttered to herself, was quite serious. In addition to Duke Herhart's arrival, Lady Brandt had visited at Arvis several days ago. As a result, Leila was in a rush. She had to gather up all the raspberries in the forest before she came across the Duke or before she got summoned by Lady Brandt. Thankfully, the two were busy. It seemed like they were getting ready for their engagement to go public. Wearing a wide-brimmed straw hat, Leila made a quick step towards the forest. There, she found a bush of overgrown raspberries. No matter how hard the people of Arvis and the forest animals worked and ate, there was still plenty of fruits falling on the floor and rotting away. Leila, who diligently roamed around the forest, filled up the basket before noon. Even though she felt like her arms were about to fall out because of the basket's heavy weight, she felt light-hearted. Leila threw her basket under the tree shade. She then swiftly headed towards the river to thoroughly remove the traces of the fierce raspberry scent and colour off her hands and her face. The Solche River encased the Herhart's garden and its valleys. The river looked beautiful from the city centre, but the place where the Solche River looked the best was at the Arvis cemetery. Leila took out a handkerchief from her apron and wiped off the water droplets drizzling down her face. The refreshing river played a big role in cooling down the scorching weather during the summer. Leila thought of dipping her feet into the river, but she then shook her head. There were 5 cousins older than Leila in her aunt's house, where she first resided in before getting sent out. Everyone was rough and mischievous. One day, her cousins had dragged and plunged Leila into a river. They justified themselves by stating it was her initiation ceremony into the household. If it weren't for her neighbour who saved her after hearing her yells, Leila would have been taken by the water ghost. Even though it was her cousins in the wrong, Leila was the one who was beaten that night by her drunk uncle, and within a few weeks, she was driven out and had moved to her next relative's house. They said they couldn't take care of a child who took their kindness for granted. Although it was unfair, Leila decided to consider it as a good thing because she believed her next relative's house would be better to her. the next house, the house after the next. Every time she was passed on from one place to another, she hoped for a better treatment. She thought her earnest wishes came true when she finally settled down at Uncle Bill's cabin. So all was good. Leila turned around and headed underneath the tree. She put the newspaper that was pinned in the corner of the basket into her apron pocket and began to climb the tree. Although she wasn't as quick and agile as before, she had her know-hows. She learned it from Uncle Bill. Leila sat cozily on the tree branch like a fitted chair. She firmly believed the Solche River was the most magnificent river in the world. Kyle, who was used to traveling to many cities, agreed to her words. Leila thought her opinion was proved to be an objective fact. She observed the water birds looking for food as the fresh scent of the river seeped into her nose. Summer was definitely a heavenly season. Leila, with a determined look on her face, suddenly opened the newspaper from her apron pocket and flipped to the mystery serial novel page. The detective, with his brilliant brain, was about to expose the criminal through his deductions. She began to excitedly race through the novel. It was only after a while when Matthias emerged his face out of the water's surface. His distinct Adam's apple moved up and down to the rhythm of his heavy breathing. The man's healthy, nude body reflected over the river current. When he was about to return to his mansion, Matthias had changed his mind and began to swim towards the direction of the current. Matthias, who liked the Solche River and the Avis forest, moved to the boathouse next to the dock, where he could see the whole landscape in the mini annex. His grandmother and mother rarely walked near the riverside, so the place was Matthias's private world. When there were no visitors stopping by the mansion, Matthias often visited the annex in order to blankly stare at the landscape beyond the window, read a book, or even take a nap if he was bored. It was the most comfortable place to do anything. Of course, his most favorite thing to do was when he entrusted his body into the river just like now. While lying in the water, Matthias stared up at the sky covered in between the green branches. The wind permeated the sound of leaves swaying and the sound of rippling water along with the birds' cries. He could exceptionally feel the river's calmness today, as the mansion had been noisy over the last few days. Negotiation contracts on the marriage, the Herhart and the Brandt household were about to sign, had been going along smoothly, if nothing unusual came up. His engagement with Claudine was to be announced before the end of this summer. Matthias agreed for his engagement period to last for about a year. If he gained enough honor as the Duke of Avis, he didn't have to maintain his position as officer any longer. After spending around 1 or 2 years in the military division, he was at the most appropriate moment to discharge from the military and get married. He planned to focus all his attention on his family business after the marriage. It was a life that he would go along like the flow of the calm current. Matthias resigned his body to the river as his eyes closed. The warm sunshine, cold currents, and the sound of ripples breaking down in his ears felt as if that was everything in his world. Before he could blink, Matthias instantly recognized the woman's identity at that same moment. The woman who folded up her newspaper she was reading turned her head towards him. It was that annoying woman, Leila Llewellyn.